We thank the Lord that we are gathered here today to study scientific creationism, specifically found in Genesis 1:1. So if we will recall what happened to the Israelites in the wilderness, they often, if God gives them blessings, they often forget. So it's like a cycle. And then they are called a hard-headed nation. So, in the present times, we can also say the same thing in general to people around. That whenever we wake up in the morning, we see all things around us. There's a tendency that everything that's just given in front of us is like something that, okay, it's not too much valuable. Why? Because it's always in front of us. We have that tendency not to give any recognition or maybe a small recognition only once all the things around you, all the blessings that God is giving us is always right in front of us. Now, the reason why this topic was selected is this is under the subject, the doctrine of God. So one of the major topics, or one of the ways we can further understand our God, the Creator, is by understanding Him as He has revealed Himself in terms of general revelation when it comes to His creation. So our topic here is scientific creationism, but we first will discuss about evolution and then the Big Bang, although at times they are complementary to one another. Then we will define scientific creationism. And then, since this is not strictly a science lesson, but more of a theological lesson, like it's a doctrine, it's a doctrine of God, we will more give weight on the theological aspect of it. Specifically, how we will exegete Genesis 1:1 and how it will apply to us in our daily lives, in our appreciation and recognition of how magnificent is our God, how awesome He is in revealing Himself through creation. So, in number 4 agenda, we will be discussing how Christians now may use or abuse the knowledge of scientific creationism, or perhaps to some of us, to many of us, it will just be a refresher. Then we go to conclusion. So what is evolution? Evolution is the change in the hereditary characteristics of living things over successive generations through natural selection, genetic drift, mutation, and gene diversity. So generally speaking, those individuals who are stronger tend to have the inclination to preserve themselves. So this is talking about the idea of the survival of the fittest. So the strongest has the greatest likelihood of survival. So that is evolution. Next, we have this Big Bang. So this Big Bang is something like this. There was about 13.8 billion of years ago. I'm just defining how the scientists define it, not necessarily endorsing it. Approximately about 13.8 billion of years, there was this so-called a dense material. That dense material, we don't know how you should measure it, but it's extremely hot. It's thick. I don't know how thick was that. I have actually researched. There was no clear answer of it. There were some measurements. And it is compact. And this compact material, what happened? This compact material is called singularity. And that singularity previously has been defined as something that exploded. So meaning, if it exploded, so it's a Big Bang, now naturally your thinking will be, there is destruction, right? But there was a modification of the definition. It became now expansion. Before destruction or explosion now becomes expansion. And that process of expansion they called inflation. Not the finance and accounting context of inflation, but let's just accept it, it's inflation. Now the universe continually expands rapidly and cools itself. So that is the explanation. But then again, what does the Bible tell us? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So let us not preempt, but look at this. There is an insert, Isaiah 40:22. I was amazed by this verse and some other verses that corroborate it. It says, God stretches out. It's like a tent. It's like a tent that is being stretched out, like a curtain and spread out to dwell in it. So the creation has been done in 6 days. Then after that, there is no more creation, but rather it unfolds itself. So that's what the Bible tells us. If you will look at the screen, I just think that this is not really a very good picture, but I cannot see anything else better than that, because I would normally think that using the singularity, it's supposed to be everywhere, right? Not just the east. It looks like the east direction, if this is really how you will stand under gravity. But anyway, it looks like that for one side. That's approximately 13.8 billion of years, 4.5 billion naman yung Earth. So that is the evolution and now the Big Bang. Before we move on to scientific creationism, let's just analyze first what are available to learn about evolution and the Big Bang, and how we can sort of like make some validations, trying to understand. Because when we study this, it's better that we try to put ourselves in the shoes of the scientists on how they defined evolution. I believe not all scientists believe evolution and Big Bang, but for the purpose of this lesson, let's just go through it, because there are a lot of scientists here. So anyway, as they say, whatever I bring up here, I was not able to put on slide yung references. Now, these are not my words, these are just researches. So just bear with me and let's try to understand what are these. Number one, there is what we call unobservable origins. It cannot be directly observed. Imagine somebody lived for 13.7 or maybe 8 years. Nobody can validate that. What is the origin? My question, I was studying this, is, okay, if everything started with a dense material that's called the singularity, in what sort of space will that dense material be placed? So what is the space surrounding it? Where is the location of it? What is the time? When did that happen? I don't know. It cannot be answered. Nobody can answer. Even the scientists, all those who have actually introduced this concept, they cannot answer it. If you can check with AI, they cannot also answer it. But anyway, cannot be observed. Another thing is, it's almost the same. Unknown initial conditions at the starting point. And then imagine the time, millions, or shall we say billions of years. Number two, there is what we call assumptions in dating. We are not very technical yet. The number three is more technical. This assumptions in dating is about the ice layers, the rocks. That one is the, what do you call that? Grand Canyon, and then there are other places around the Greenland. I checked also. It's not only in one place. That picture, that situation, that kind of what do you call that, structure, wherein you can imagine that there must have been a catastrophic flood, is everywhere. It's not just in the Middle East, it's everywhere. That's what I've researched. And there are also ice layers, etc. And they assume, just like a tree, when you look at the tree, there is like lines there. So they assume that it's like 1 year, each of the lines, or 1 season, etc. That is also the way they measure the date or the years when it comes to ice layers. Sometimes seasons, sometimes years. So basically, it's not digital, it's more of analog. Number 3, overlooked factors. There is what we call radioactive dating. So we can identify maybe carbon-14, and then potassium argon, and then uranium lead. So you pick those latter parts are more of millions of years, but the carbon-14 measurement is 50 to 60 years only. So these rates of radioactive decay are assumed to be constant. So imagine, they have come up with an idea that whatever changes happens for the next 50 years, for the next 100, 200, 1 million years are constant over time. So that's the other issue there. But really, we know that there should be differences between past situations, middle, and present environments. Imagine, let's use the candle as an illustration here. If the candle will be used, such as an illustration of how scientists is dating the years of a specific material, not necessarily the fossils themselves. They are actually after the rocks and the minerals around the fossils. We will go there in a while, I hope. So imagine a candle, and the candle is lit. Of course, the candle has a wick. There are issues there. How long was the wick? How big is the fire? At what time did they start the fire? Nobody knows who actually started the fire. And let's say, for example, a candle, you put a marker, and then that will be the use of that will be your guide in measurement. How many inches would you write there to indicate 10 years or a decade, 1 year? I don't know. It's really very difficult. And in fact, maybe there is wind in the middle, assuming that the candle the wax of the candle will all be gone in, like, I don't know, maybe 2 hours or maybe 3 hours. Imagine, there can be fire in the middle. There can be air or wind in the middle. Or there can be, I don't know, ice or whatever. That may actually lessen the heat of the fire, or maybe there will be the fire will grow stronger. We don't know all of those things. Number 4, so basically there are variabilities in materials and substances over time. So it's very hard for us to comprehend really and observe and provide support to evolution and Big Bang. Number 4, simplistic extrapolations. Life is theorized to have evolved from common ancestors. Example, a plant, or a primordial, or an organic molecule, wherein a molecule is like 2 or more atoms chemically bonded together to produce the smallest substance that retain its composition. But the problem is, a while ago we just defined the Big Bang. It started with a singularity. So we can actually, this is the words of some of those who are arguing against the Big Bang and the evolutionists, that humans come from plant, humans come from a rock, animals come from a rock, because everything started with a single dense material. So it's really very, very hard to understand. But anyway, let's try a little bit harder. Number 6, The possibility of discarding samples. We know, and I think, well, what happened here? Okay. Maybe in our elementary days or high school days, I assume we all had some scientific experiments. We went to the laboratories and all that. It's possible that there are discarding of samples, or samples showing evidences of contamination or open system behavior. They lose their or gain their parent-daughter isotopes, are possibly excluded from the final age of interpretation. So it's very hard to understand what an isotope is, but the way I recall it, it's like, again, atoms, combination of atoms, and there are similar protons in it, and the difference relies on the neutrons, etc., etc. So one of those examples are the carbon-14. And carbon-12, as I've read, and carbon-13, they are static. They cannot be used to measure time because it's only carbon-14 that is decaying. So that is the one that was identified by scientists in order to measure the years or the dates. So possibly, they may have removed some of the samples that shows contamination. So anyway, sometimes we do not always want to be presumptuous. We don't want to always judge somebody's work, but maybe just these are possibilities that those who are doing experiments may have already the results in their minds, right? And then when there are additional substances that are put in their work that does not produce the same results, there's a possibility of discarding some samples. Again, these are not my words. I just researched on it. I'm just elaborating what I have researched on. Number 7, cross-checking with multiple methods. I just mentioned a while ago 3, actually 4, including the rocks and ice formations. And then what we call macroevolution. Microevolutions, we do not have an issue on that. I believe all of us do not have an issue with that because, well, animals adapt, right? So if it were a very small amount of change, then that is just simple adaptation. It's microevolution. The problem is when monkeys became humans, when chimpanzees, who happen to be like 1 or 2% in terms of difference of DNA with humans, still chimpanzees are chimpanzees 100, 300, 1,000 years ago. They never change. So that is a macroevolution if these chimpanzees really change into humans. But the point is, humans strive, but the chimpanzees are the same exactly as God has designed them. So now we go to the topic. What is scientific creationism? It is a belief that the origins, the universe, the earth, life itself, can be best explained by the literal interpretation of the Bible, which we can find in Genesis. And that this belief are supported by scientific arguments, observations, and all that. So science is actually corroborating, science should be supporting the biblical narratives instead of the other way around. So that is our topic, scientific creationism. Okay. To further understand what scientific creationism means, number 1, there was a sudden creation of the universe, energy and life from nothing. The Latin word there is ex nihilo, from Genesis 1 to 3, reinforced by Hebrews 11:3. It says there, Bereshit bara Elohim et Hashamayim ve'et haaretz. So that is the Hebrew word for Genesis 1:1. Number 2, we will further exegete that Genesis 1:1 later. Let's just introduce 1, 2, and 3. Number 2, insufficiency of mutation. We have in ourselves, even though we are not scientists, we observe, right? We know And we can sense that there are no macro evolutions that are happening. There are no such mutations. There are in the movies, the mutants or whatever is that. And the natural selection, it's as if a non-living thing, material, will literally choose for itself to become a living thing. It's very hard to understand, but anyway, that's how it was presented. In bringing about development of all living kinds from a single organism, Genesis 2:1 states that, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all of the host of them. Number 3, we will have examples for number 2. Number 3, changes only within fixed limits of originally created kinds of plants and animals. When God has created trees, they will not become animals. Trees are trees. If you plant a mango tree, well, Deacon Glenn is here, it cannot bear tomatoes, sort of like that. If it were a plant like a pineapple, it will not bear a different fruit. There will always be a limitation. So kinds of plants, they were created them in their own kind. Animals were created in their own kind. So that is Genesis 1, 1 or 11 to 12, 20 to 26. So we now go to number 1. Remember this. Where is that? Number 1. It's, the sudden creation will now expand a little bit more on that. It's not showing on screen. But, okay. If we will search on the Living Bible, we know what's written in Genesis 1:1 using the NASB, using the ESV, and many others. But there are some, like the Living Bible translation, TEV, NRSV, and some others. I saw other two. This is how they have translated it. When God began creating. In fact, in other translations, which I believe they were the true translations, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, period. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, period. The earth was without form and void, and the darkness, etc. But here, what happened is, when God began creating, and there's a comma, when God began creating the heavens and the earth, comma, the earth is without form and void, etc. So if we read it like that, then it can simply imply that there was a substance prior to the creation. Think about it this way. Noong ang Diyos, I tried to translate it in Tagalog, noong ang Diyos ay naglikha or lumikha, kama, ay nagsimula pala, no? Noong ang Diyos ay, kasi began, noong ang Diyos ay nagsimulang lumikha ang mga langit at lupa, walang period, ang mga langit at lupa ay without form. So, walang forma. O, yun na lang ang translation natin. And void. So, yung void, hindi naman yung parang check na Binoy, no? It's, when I search on it, the Hebrew word, tohu wa bohu. So, bohu means uninhabited. It's uninhabited. There is nothing. There is no life. Mag-sidetrack lang tayo. Look at the earth and try to search if there is any living thing outside of the earth. There is none in Venus, nor in Mars, in any other planets, in every whatever heavenly bodies. It's only on earth. That's the reason why I was thinking, how is it that it started with a dense material, and then it's only in the earth that there is life? How come that there are also no natural selection that's happening everywhere? It's very hard to understand, but let's try to understand. This is how this translation was written. When God began creating the heavens and the earth, and it suggests that there are things around God when He was creating, because there was no period, there was a comma. But really, this is how it should have been translated. So from the book of Gordon Spikeman, Reformation Theology, page 147, you will see there, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God means there are no introductions, no apologies, no attempt for justification or verification. There are no what we call once upon a time introductions. And there is also, least of all, any attempts of proofs of the existence of God. What the scriptures tell us is simply, God was simply there because God is the great presuppositional person. So God is a presuppositional person. It's a very blunt introduction. It's a very blunt statement, saying, in the beginning, God. Again, if we exegete that Bereshit, bara, so Bereshit is in the beginning, bara means created. So Bereshit, bara. That bara there, if you will look it up, or if you will see the Hebrew meaning of that, that is under the kal stem. It's simple, it's perfect, it is third person singular. And the Bereshit is in the beginning, it is absolute statement. Hindi siya construct. Unlike what we have seen here, this is a construct. It is not an absolute. This is waiting for a condition, but rather the correct translation should have been, in the beginning, God, which is an absolute statement. So that is from Gordon Spikeman, Reformation Theology. For number 2, in scientific creationism, there is what we call insufficiency of mutation and natural selection. A while ago, I've already mentioned some, or number 1. Number 2, there was a worldwide flood. Majority of the fossils were formed rapidly. I wonder how fossils were created, because I have observed whenever there is a living animal that died, you just left it there. Number 1, there will be maybe cats eating them or some scavengers. If that were just left there, some flies and then worms, ultimately they will decompose. But then these fossils, the reason why they were made fossils is because there was a catastrophic event that happened, and they were covered with sediments that later on became rocks, etc. So they were preserved. The reason why when archaeologists are able to dig them, they were still like that. There were also researches wherein some fossils, a mother animal was laying birth to her child. So imagine, how can that possibly be if it is not a one-time event, a catastrophic event that you cannot even wait to give birth to your offspring? And another is a predator, fossilized. These two animals were fossilized while the predator is capturing the prey. Can you imagine? So meaning, these fossils were fossilized because there was a catastrophic event, a global event that happened. That is stated in Genesis 6, 5-8. Number 3, a relatively recent inception of the earth and living kinds. Both earth and various forms of life were created not long ago. What has been mentioned here is 13.8, 14.5. These are just approximates for the earth. But really, based on the Bible, Genesis 5-11, it is just a matter of thousands of years. So it's really very hard to comprehend. Anyway, so let us just follow the thinking of an evolutionist. Coming from John F. Huffaker's book, Modern Humans. Look at that highlighted in blue. Anatomically, modern humans emerged in Africa. Even if you look it up in Google, it's still the same, 300 years ago. That is what scientists say. Again, not all scientists. We're just saying that in general, these are how they have interpreted it. Imagine if humans existed 300 years ago and we are now in 2025. So maybe yung BC niyan is 300 to 1,000, etc. Kasi BC, di ba? Tapos AD. So, masyadong malayo. Just for the sake of computation, assuming that for case 1, initial population is 1 pair. Let's just assume there is Adam and Eve na lang doon sa 300 years na yon. So, 1 pair, 2 people. Then average children per pair, let's just assume 5. Because if we will say Adam had a lot of, Jacob had 12, let's just be conservative here, 5. These are just assumptions. No? These are not read in the books. What I'm trying to say is I just became very conservative. The general length or average mortality is 35 years. There are people back in the days, 969, ito sila, 930, Adam. We're just using 35 just for the sake of illustration. Next, wars cost 20%. It's too much if it's 1/2. So let's just use 20% loss every 250 years. So total time, I did not even use 300 years. I even just used 10,000 years because I don't know if my computer can still calculate that if I will use, or even the AI can, or whatever engine can be used, can calculate. But anyway, I just used 10,000. Imagine what happened in the computation. The computed population is roughly 10 to raised to the 196 times greater than the current world population of 8.2 billion. If humans existed 10,000 years ago, but they claim it's 300,000. So you can just imagine how incomprehensibly will be the result if it were computed at 300,000. Now, I tried to replicate, although there's a minor problem there. It's supposed to be 4,373 because in our computation, there is no zero, right? So if during the flood, there are 8 people, 4 pairs. Since yung yung BC is 1, then walang 0. So nagkamali ako. It should have been 4,372, but then again, it's a minor thing, so let's just proceed. This case, 4,373 years as the starting point of 8 people, 4 pairs, male and female, the family of Noah, 4 with 20% population loss every 250 years of war, and then population must grow, this and that. This corresponds to about 2.43 surviving children per pair per generation. The mathematical result is this will produce approximately 8.2 billion people within such 4,373 years. I just think that this is reasonable and understandable if you will use 4,373 years. Not saying that the earth is 4,000, it's roughly about 6,000. But then, because of the great flood, we have to remove the more than 1,000 plus years in the equation. So, let's now go to the third. changes only within fixed limits of originally created kinds. I've already said some, but let us just read the Bible. It says here, and God said, let the earth sprout vegetation yielding seed and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which in their seed is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and these trees bearing fruit, in which is in their seed, each according to its kind. So it was always like that, according to its kind. There's a limit which God has actually said, and Moses has written there. It cannot be that some animals will evolve into something else. Look at this, Genesis 1, 20 to 26. And God said, just go straight to the underscored words, according to their kinds, because I believe all of us have already read this, or majority. According to their kinds, and livestock according to their kinds. It's repeatedly, and God saw it was good. And that's only the time that God said, let us make man. So that is scientific creationism. Meron pa palang pahabol. Okay, changes only within fixed limits. This is just an example. The Pakicetus from Pakistan. It's sort of like a terrestrial mammal. It's like a dog, maybe not exactly looks like a dog. But it used to live along the beach, or beaches in Pakistan. And that is how they have described it, that first, this number one, and then it became something like that. Actually, kakulay na nito, no? Brown, and then gray. Anyway, it slowly, maybe it swims. The reason why that is there in the picture. And then later on, it became a whale. So the ancestor of the whale is a terrestrial animal, which looks like a dog. But if you will research the Pakicetus, it's already extinct. So that is the Pakicetus, that is the ancestor of a whale. I'm just saying whatever I have researched, but I don't subscribe to this. So evolutionists say over 50 millions of years through a series of transitional forms. In fact, if they presented the fossils for this transition, a lot of creationists, scientific creationists, argue that the transitional fossils are not enough to explain how come that a terrestrial animal will transform into an aquatic animal such as the whale. And not only that, look at the whale, it's so huge. I mean, okay, look at this. This Pakicetus became Ambulicetus. Ang hirap, parang lettuce yan. Ang hirap. So, Ambulicetus, ayun, medyo magkamukha naman right? Pakicetus, and then medyo gumanon, and then yung leaves niya medyo gumanon, and then yung dito, lumaki. Pero yung dito, lumaki din, right? So, but look at the skulls. My problem was, why is it that the hippopotamus, who's also believed to be in the family of whales, did not evolve? That's my problem. How come that only few animals evolved, even though they said it's closest or within the family is the hippopotamus, but it did not evolve. And I tried to research additional animals. I got like 2, and one of which is Ambulicetus. And this is like 1940s. I mean, these are the discoveries just not so far, not so long ago. Anyway, it remains to be a question. They cannot present many animals, like more than 10. It's just a few. And it's like this sample will represent the whole population of animals, and everyone else evolved into something they were not when they were created. Again, this is not a science lesson. So we just use science to somehow identify or try to understand. Let's put ourselves in their shoes, in the evolutionists' shoes, in those who are advocates of the Big Bang Theory. But then again, let's go back for the purpose of this lesson. How Christians may use, if you've learned or if you were just refreshed about the knowledge of scientific creationism, which again is the belief that Christians or those who believe in God say that all the things around us, the universe, the earth, life itself, are best explained by the biblical narratives found in Genesis. Then the question now is, how can we use it? How can we abuse it? In terms of usage, number one, we can conduct lectures affirming God as the Creator. We can defend the faith, showing that belief in creation science is not against science, but in line with observable evidences. We can rebuke skeptics politely. Again, politely. We can do that. It's not something that is a contradiction. We can do that. We can argue politely and objectively when there are such situations or opportunities. Let's not miss the opportunities. When we are given an opportunity to correct, let's correct them prayerfully. In fact, there are times that when faced with such situation, even though my eyes are open, I am praying. If there's an opportunity to make the proper corrections in an apologetic manner, not to drive away people just because they have different views. Number four, we can walk them through all the relevant, or maybe majority, not necessarily all, the relevant verses that will point them to the Creator of the universe. So that is how Christians may use the knowledge of scientific creationism. And then how can we abuse? If we are now forcing our lectures to be part of the curriculum, we can already tell. When I was in my elementary days, I keep on thinking, is this really true? I mean, the textbooks, I have to answer this, but my mind, I don't know. I have to have a good score in my exam, so I will have to answer them anyway. But going back, scientific creationism, we should not force it to be part of the curriculum. Well, if the Lord wills that the administrators or the government themselves will change the Philippine Constitution to allow such lectures, such textbooks to be embedded with scientific creationism, then that's good. But let's not force it. Let's continue to pray that maybe later on they will have a change of mind and the laws may be changed as well. Number two, misrepresent them by saying, oh, man's ancestry is a broccoli. Because I've already scanned YouTubes and Facebook reels and all that. There are some scientific creationists that sort of like mock. I want to edit this kasi I think this is also sort of like mocking. Kaya kasi andiyan kanina Big Bang advocates na lang or Big Bang Theory believers. Anyway, I think wala no. Let me just present it. I'm not sure if it will work. Anyway, tinago ko yung Big Bang kasi evolutionists and Big Bangers nilagay ko eh. I I'm going against this recommendation. So, going back, I think you know, yung dogs, they say their ancestor is a primordial soup. It's mocking the evolutionist. Number 3, using creationism to reject all modern medical science. No, we were given what we call common grace. Again, science does not contradict the Bible. Science supports the Bible. So we should not reject. Number 4, rejecting all mainstream sciences. Ministers may discourage believers. Oh, you should no longer study science. No, we do not want to do that. It's in line also with number 3. We should accept science, that is the knowledge, the wisdom that God has given to us, and many other people who are blessed by God with common grace, so we will not reject that. It should go hand in hand with the biblical narratives. Number 5, let's not condemn the evolutionists and the Big Bang Theory believers. I just call them like that. Maybe they just don't know yet. Maybe they just know it. Because there are a lot of testimonies that they were before evolutionists, then became Christians, or if not Christians, at least believers of God. Number 6, in our preaching, let us not preach that Christians who believes in the old earth are not truly saved. Because there are Christians who believe in old earth. When I say old earth, it's not the young earth. The young earth is like more or less 6,000 years old. Wherein at the time of Noah, that was like 2,300, I think, BC. So basically from Noah's flood to now, it's like 4,372 years. Middle of the year. So nasa June 29 tayo. So those are our recommendations. And we're almost done. We have 2 slides left. Let me read the commentary from Robert Raymund. It's Robert Raymund, not me. It is vital that the church resist the current secularistic trend and continue to insist the first 11 chapters of Genesis as reliable history, preserved from error. Sometimes we forget. I'm not accusing all of us, but sometimes, including myself, when you wake up in the morning, we forget to be at awe. Especially when you go outside, you go to around UP, you see the mountains, the trees and everything. Sometimes we forget to give reverence to our God, who has preserved all these things for us, who has given all these things for us. So preserved from error by superintending oversight of the Holy Spirit. So scientific acceptability must not determine exegetical reliability. So why we are saying this? Because there are a lot of Christians, a few years ago, or maybe 1 or maybe 2 decades ago, they believe in the young earth creationism. They believe in scientific creationism, but later on, they were led astray and believed the old earth. Why? Because in Genesis 1, and in Genesis 2, because of there's a gap theory, or maybe, let's just put it this way, that there was this rebellion that happened in between those 2 verses, but the point is, it's not there. It is absolute. It is not a construct. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, period. The earth is without form and void, etc. Hindi yon construct. So, we must determine the exegetical reliability, not because of the acceptance of the evolution science and the Big Bang Theory, but rather we stick to the text itself because of the pressure coming from the evolutionists. Some of the Christians are persuaded to move into believing in the old earth creation. So as a conclusion, yeah, okay. Let me read what Thomas Huxley said. Actually, this person probably is more responsible than anyone when it comes to acceptance of the Darwinian philosophy. Why? Because this person, Thomas, has actually released a lot of articles supporting the evolution theory of Darwin. Nevertheless, let's recognize what he has said. Creation, in the ordinary sense of the word, is perfectly conceivable. I find no difficulty in conceiving that at some former period this universe was not in existence and that it made its appearance in 6 days in consequence of the power of some pre-existing being. The source is The Scientific Creationism by Henry M. Morris. It says, in the beginning in Hebrew, Bereshit, bara Elohim et Hashamayim, ve'et haaretz. In English, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Thank you. We can now have the Q&A. And there are a lot of scientists here who can help me. Kaya nga ako dito nagpo-pwesto na eh. Sige.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Raymund. I'm awed by how you presented this Sunday school lesson. Just to note on, is it possible to add to how we can use scientific creationism? I'm thinking there are only 4 listed here. But within my framework, I'm a communication scholar and not a natural scientist, a social scientist. And where I'm looking as a scholar, looking at the power when God created the universe. So it's not what was created in the material world, but looking at the power. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Actually, my dissertation is founded on it. And so how do we use scientific creationism is we have to, we can use it for our scholarship. When we advance knowledge, scientific knowledge can be advanced at the same time, not just arguing against, of course, those theories, they are theories anyway, and therefore just a means to explain. So as a theory and not proven, though of course by validation, this is a scientific method where you validate a theory, a proposed explanation. But the Word of God is absolute. And the Word of God is that power. Yung sa last slide that was shown, sabi ni Thomas Huxley, in consequence of the power of some pre-existing being. So that power is the power of God's Word, the pre-existent God. Paano niya na-create ang universe? Is the power of His Word. God said, let there be light. So it speaks of the creativity of communication. Of course, that's a plug. So communication is creative, and it's how our lives become. We are defined by the Word of God and how we use it. So that's just my point, that if we can add to how we may use scientific creationism to use it to advance our own scholarship. In our case, in my case, in my particular, some of the girls here are the same, it's in the same field. So in my case, I enjoy it because able to produce scholarly work within the framework of scientific creationism without saying, in my dissertation is actually, in God said, let there be light, and there was light, without saying so. It explained the power, the creativity, the creativity of communication. So this is possible. Scientific creationism, if you are a believer, we are Christians, we can advance even our scholarship through scientific creationism without saying it explicitly. You know, your theological belief in scientific creationism should be able to define your theoretical postulations, the theoretical pursuits.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ate Jean. Just because you said that, something occurred to me just right now, because it was also my question, so I tried to look for the answer. Then God said, "Let there be light," right? And there was light. My question before was in John 1:1. In the beginning, God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So I was trying to understand who the Word is. So obviously it's Jesus Christ. Now, in connection to what you just commented on, I was, by God's grace, I was able to research on that, and it was not Jesus Christ as the literal word, but he was actually the will and power of God behind those words. So maganda yung it became sort of like my meditation at that time. So thank you. Thank you, Ate Jim. Any more questions? Si Brother Paul.
Maraming salamat, Brother Raymond. I wasn't expecting a very thorough presentation from a certified public accountant. Anyway, my concern only is that it's hard to trust science because, from a simple mind like mine, because even on the basic issue about coconut oil, scientists can't even agree if it's beneficial or not. When Deacon Glenn presented yung case niya about GMO, I forgot to mention na, of course, the court decided that to put it on hold because there was no consensus from the scientific community with regard to the risks and benefits of GMO. And I should have mentioned also that yung isang consultant
GMO is
genetically modified organism at Deacon Glenn.
okay, genetically
So
modified.
when in my previous employer, one of our consultants pushed yung sustainable agriculture aggressively and really hated GMO. And to my surprise, is Dr. Ted Mendoza, also from UPLB. So even if UPLB as a scientific community cannot arrive at a consensus on the benefits and risks of GMO, I mean, these things are really hard to argue against. I remember a presentation made by Pastor years ago na science actually relies heavily on what can be observed and what can be measured. They're now making so many assumptions and assumptions about what happened millions of years ago when nobody was really there. Mm-hmm. So actually, if you ask me, and if I may share, I take more comfort in philosophy and in the Latin saying na yung, which I learned also here, yung ex nihilo nihil fit. Nothing can come out of, something cannot come out of nothing. So these arguments about primordial soup and yung, what you mentioned kanina, yung dense material, the basic question is really, where did this all come from? No? Where did all this that we see come from? No? Mm-hmm. And the best argument for that is from a self-existent being, God Himself. No? Because for all we know, that is a better, actually that's an easier fact to accept, or easier to accept than than taking a leap of faith on matters such as evolution and the Big Bang Theory, which are basically, if you ask me, or maybe other simple minds like me, it's basically speculation. From where we stand.
Thank you, Brother Paul. Some of the critics about that, just like what you have said, they say that the evolutionists or those who advocate the Big Bang Theory, they claim that scientific creationists are believers, but they are using their faith, and just because they are using their faith, they are looked at as pseudoscientists. So hindi naman talaga daw totoo. It's just that their faith comes first, then there is science. That is the accusation. Well, let's just go with that for now. But if you will look at it, just like other debaters against the evolutionists, they also say that there's no difference actually. If the Christians, just in that literal sense, not really heavily on theological matters, just like let's just lower our bars just for the sake of this discussion. If the evolutionists claim that we are believing only based on faith and everything else is just like science, just going with such a faith, if you will look at it, they're also using faith, right? Kasi look at the dense material which we started with. Nobody has seen that. Nobody existed more than 1 million years old to even all history is like within the framework of less than 6,000. Walang history written more than that. So it cannot really be that such theories happen, or if they claim or they accuse us of using faith, it's actually bouncing back to them that they are also using faith, but they're different. They have a different faith. What we have is a faith in God, in the scriptures that was written for Him to be revealed to us, and their faith is a worldly faith. So thank you, Brother Paul, for that comment. Ay, si Tita Te.
Naku, salamat. Salamat din sa presentation. Hindi ko alam siguro nangyayari. Hindi ko alam kung ano nangyayari sa womb ng mother ko when she was conceiving me. Pero sinabi sa Bible, I knitted you in your mother's womb. Having said that, nakita ko na yung palang yung ibinigay din ng Panginoon yung understanding pag-iisip tungkol sa science tsaka sa no. Ngayon, ang nakita ko rito, kasi nagbabasa ako noon tungkol sa evolution, pero Christian na ako. Pero I had the tendency to believe them. Pero nung nakita ko yung Big Bang Theory as opposed to the law, doon ako nagkaroon ng pagbabago ng isip. Kasi hindi pwedeng maging law ang lahat ng kiniklaim ng Big Bang Theory until they are applied in all. Kapares siya sa psychology. Puro principles lang, pero walang law. Kasi human beings are different. It works only on a group of people, kunwari Asians or Filipinos. Iba ang nature natin kaysa sa Americans, kaysa sa kaya meron lang tayong tinatawag na principles. Mm-hmm. Pero wala yung law that will truly describe the totality of humankind. Only God can do that. Yun ang isa, no? Yung theory, Big Bang Theory, nung makita ko yun, I dropped all the books about science. Kasi sabi ko, if all of this cannot really explain the totality or yung lahat ng nasasakupan niya sa kanilang paniniwala, then there must be something wrong. Theory pa lang yan. Hindi pa nga na, kaya nga sinasabi nila, merong tinatawag na missing link. Ay, yung missing link na hanggang ngayon missing pa. Kaya, sabi nga nila, siguro yung missing link na yon ay banana. No? Kaya, pero hanggang ngayon, they really could not find the missing link why an ape becomes a human being. Why? Sabi ko, no, I don't want to be an ape. I don't want to have an ancestor of apes. Very clear. Ang Bible tama yung pananampalataya. Kasi una roon sinabi, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Tapos sabi niya, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth at lahat ng mga ginawa niya. And all and everything that He created was good. Siguro, yun ang, mula noon talagang drinap ko yung sa ano. Ngayon, habang ako ay nag-grow sa aking pananampalataya, na-discover ko rin na ang math at ang science ay nandoon na even before the creation of the world. Ine-explain lang sa atin ng Panginoon at dinidiscover lang natin. But they were there already. Yung principles of theory and law. Sino ang nakaisip niyan? Naisip din yan ng tao kasi if it does not apply to everything, then you cannot say it's a law. Kaya ano lang siya, yung theory pa lang siya. Ang theory it applies only to a specific group or a specific Kaya yun ang aking panampalataya. So I drop everything at ngayon dinidiscover ko na ang science pala ay hindi niya ine-explain ang Panginoon kung hindi ang Panginoon ang nag-e-explain ng science. True science sa atin. At saka ang true principles of math. Galing talaga ng Panginoon. Magaling siya talaga. Pero ito, kailangan lang natin samahan ng pananampalataya kaparis ng sinabi mo kanina. Faith. Faith. Yun lang ang pwede kong idagdag.
Sige, thank you pa, Tita Te. So, so yung pong yung science, mas maganda po if wag niyo naman pong totally i-drop kasi talaga pong yung science naman is really helpful, especially when it comes to medicine at saka yung sa agriculture and all that. But let's not dismiss science as in like totally, but this is used by God to add to our lives, to add to our understanding. There is like yung common grace po for the science. We can just have a very clear line delineating what we can accept and not. Kasi po, yun nga, yung theory of the evolution from ape, nagiging tao and all that, marami pong mga sinasabi, but it's not really observable. Na-discuss na po natin all of that. So, salamat sa Panginoon that we were given knowledge and wisdom that will help us in our lives and that corroborates in what He has said. Doon po tayo magsimula. Ano yung sinabi niya? Kung sinabi niya, in the beginning, God, that is an absolute statement. God created. Then if you will look at the sciences, it supports what God has already established. Sige pa, Tita Te.
Kanina meron binanggit na GMO, genetically modified organism. And it's ginagawa yun para sa pag-create ng mga sa agriculture and everything, Pero it does not apply to all organisms.
May limitations pa na.
Hindi siya pwedeng i-apply sa lahat ng organism. Kaya hindi lahat ng organism ay pwedeng maging o ma-subject sa genetically modified na pwede nating gamitin sa ating pang-araw-araw o sa agriculture. So, ibig sabihin, may limitation. May limitation ang GMO.
Yes.
Ayun lang, gusto ko lang idagdag yun kasi nabanggit kanina na
Sige ba. Salamat po, Tita Te. Actually, how will you approach this can be something like this. On the other hand, though we do not accept it, yung evolution, but we accept microevolution, this only highlights the limitations of man. So, you can think of it like this, na hindi naman parang tapon lahat. Na-highlight lalo ang Panginoon just because lumulutang yung mga errors ng tao. Just because lumulutang yung limitations of man. And that's also a reminder for us and a very clear reference comparing what man can do and their limitations and how we should magnify and recognize our God. Ay, si Ate Carol.
Maraming salamat sa lesson, Brother Raymond. So, as you were discussing it, I can't really help but be in awe on how great our Creator is. And yung habang dinidiscuss mo, this is really a reminder for us yung sa Romans 11:36 na for from Him and through Him and to Him are all things. To Him be glory forever. It reminds us that everything, nature, yung life, and even science itself, it comes from God. It exists through His power and for His glory. And yung science, it's studying science is one way for us to appreciate how amazing our Creator is. Habang nag-aaral tayo, mas ma-amaze ka how every cell, makikita mo how everything God created for a purpose. So it's something na we ought to remember because our lives are not meaningless. We are created for a purpose. Even creation itself was created by God for a purpose. And that's why we ought to take care of the world, respect people because human beings are made in the image of God. So, nakaka-amaze lang and I really can't help but be in awe and praise of how great our God is as our Creator. And He is really the greatest artist at saka talagang kahit yung every cell sa body natin, ma-amaze tayo kasi may purpose lahat eh. And even yung atoms and everything. So, let's really be reminded that we ought not to think that our lives are meaningless. We are made with a purpose.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ate Carol. Just recently, I talked with my cousin who is a doctor. And he showed me kung paano ino-operate yung eye. I was so amazed. And actually, it's a cataract. So yung palang cataract is, I'm not sure kung talagang pinadali niya lang yung explanation sa akin, but he just simply said yes, that we have a natural lens inside our eye. And that natural lens na raw talaga yung naging cataract. And pag nakita ko siya dun sa video, para siyang, alam mo yung pag nagluluto ka ng bulalo, meron kang namumuong yung parang yung oil, no? Ginaganon talaga, binabasag yung sebo. Nakakaaliw siyang tignan eh. Diba? So tinanggal for 1 hour yung operation. And it's really amazing. And come to think of it, katulad ng sinasabi niyo kanina ni Ate Carol, ni Tita Te, na it cannot be that something which is a non-living thing even create such a very sophisticated eye. Just an eye lang yun. Paano pa to? Diba? Look at our hands. This is the best tool ever created by God. Diba? Sinong merong ganito? I mean, we will be amazed by how God really created everything. Okay? So, si Deacon Glenn.
Pero last lang to, maikli lang to. Kasi, congratulations, ang galing ng pagka-explain. Nakikinig ako doon. Marami tayong natutunan. Papalakpak sana ako sa end, baka sumunod sila. Pero siguro, it's really if you are a real scientist, you know na may limitation. Hanggang dun lang. Marami lang mga textbooks ngayon, nag-extrapolate sila. Mga economists ng mga hilig sa ganun. They extrapolate pababa, tsaka extrapolate pataas. Beyond the limit, kaya nandun na yung Big Bang, nandun na yung evolution, which even I always talk that even Charles Darwin that say nag-evolve, natural selection. Yung ibon, humaba lang ang tuka niya kasi ang nabubuhay lang yung mahaba ang tuka dahil malalim na yung kinukuha ang uod. Yung mga Maya natin dati, di ba, medyo pula tsaka black ang sa taas. Ngayon, nawala sila. Ang naging Maya pa rin yung medyo batik-batik. Sila yung mas agile sila. Mga ganun lang. Hindi yan magiging manok. We have been working on rice for 50 years, almost 100 years. Wala ang hindi pa rin maging mais yan. Hindi pa rin maging rye yan o very relative niya. So, ang hirap talaga. May limit talaga. Ganun. But you will appreciate it. But God gave us space to mag-change ng kaunti. Iba ang color, mawala ang buhok, magkakaroon ng buhok. So, posible yun. Ang GMO, they just change to one DNA. They silence one gene para ma-create yun. They silence the oncogenes, mawala yung cancer. So, hindi talagang very minor lang, para bang nagpukpok ka lang. So, ang change ngayon, halimbawa, huwag niyong gamitin yung unggoy tsaka tao, talagang walang, imposible yun, kahit scientist walang magsasabi na. But makita mo, but you will say that chimpanzee has 99% the same DNA as human being. Laging, doon ko nakuha sa explanation ni Pastor, that doesn't mean that this book ay kamukha nito. Hindi ibig sabihin, this book is coming from this one. They have the same author. So the same as the creation. Ang chimpanzee tsaka tao medyo magkapareho. It doesn't mean that galing tayo sa chimpanzee. It means isa ang creator. So yun lang ang gusto kong it explains almost everything. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Deacon Glenn. Nothing to add. Take it from Deacon Glenn. Okay, so I think we're done. So salamat sa Panginoon. Tayo po ay mag-pray. Ama naming Diyos, salamat po sa kaunting oras that you have allowed us to once again study Genesis account and Genesis narrative of how you have created amazingly. Awesome. You are an awesome God, majestic God, the one who has created all things. And thank you for this creation. Let us be good stewards of your creation. And as you have said in your scriptures, man is rendered without an excuse but to recognize you, to honor you, to revere you, to worship you with all the good things that you have done for us. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.